Oh, we are live here on 5 Reasons YouTube for another episode of 5 Rounds on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We're now taking the 305 versus 305 fights to the streets, my friends. You see this? Let me share it. That's got to be one of the most, we were just talking about this before the show, Frank, that's got to be one of the most badass mugshots we've ever seen. Jorge Masvidal allegedly attacked Colby Covington outside of a Miami restaurant, Poppy Steakhouse, punched him twice. Covington did call the police. Masvidal was actually bragging about it on social media afterwards, and we'll talk about the charges here in a second, but game bred, Miami born and bred. He's in a little bit of trouble. We'll talk about where things go from here and about the judgment call that he made. Before we get to that, let me remind you guys that every episode of 5 Rounds on the 5 Reasons Sports Network is proudly served by the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. Keep in mind, fight fans, they have every UFC pay-per-view fight at the Quarterdeck for zero cover charge. You pay nothing at the door to watch a UFC pay-per-view. College basketball tournament, watch all the games there as well. NBA games, NHL games. They got TVs covering every wall, my friends. They got 2-for-1 happy hour. I go into the Quarterdeck and I knock down those 2-for-1 margaritas. You get a lot of bang for your buck with those 2-for-1 drinks. Those specials never end. The beer is ice cold. Guys, the food is so good. The jerk chicken sandwich, the all-American burger, the baby back ribs. The seafood is always fresh at the Quarterdeck. I like to build my own poke bowl. I love the fresh mahi-mahi, the buffalo shrimp. For my money, that's my favorite appetizer on the planet. It is so good. If you want to find the location nearest to you or just check out their menu before you go, visit them online at quarterdeckrestaurants.com. The Quarterdeck, come for the food, stay for the fun. Let me introduce first a man who has been in his share of bar fights. I think we covered this on a previous episode. Frank Zaffere is here. So, Frank, I mean, are you impressed with Masvidal's alleged antics on Monday night?
I'm not even a little bit. I'm really upset with George. I mean, first of all, I get why he's upset. You know, Colby, he specializes in crossing the line. And we've gone over that exhaustively. And the whole MMA world is seemingly constantly mad at Colby for saying something that's too much or too far over or crossing some boundary. But George had his opportunity in an octagon, in a sanctioned fight, to right the wrong, to slay the dragon, to plant one on him, to break the jaw, all the things he said he was going to do. And he got beat down in a unanimous decision. So then he decides, and look, details are a little hazy, right? Because I think things happen so fast, we don't have a lot of footage of what actually happened as the rush was coming. But apparently, hood up, mask on, rushes up to his left and just cracks him twice. That's an assault. He
hit him more times outside the restaurant than he did in 5 rounds of fighting.
Right. And, you know, so I'm just supremely disappointed. I mean, a man of George's bravado and Miami, 305, step out of the car, step in front of the man and say, let's go. It's still inappropriate because you had your chance and it didn't work out. You know, you don't get to just keep jumping him over and over again. But if he had at least done it that way, I could have digested it a little better. But this jump him thing is just it's so gangster that it's felonious. And as the story was going on, I said, when's the arrest coming? And now it's come. So yeah. That's what happens. I mean, you or I do that, James, you or I do that to Alex. There's no question. We're being arrested on the spot.
And I'm definitely pressing charges if either of you guys does that to me.
So, yeah, I'm disappointed.
Good evening, James Walker. How are you?
I'm doing okay, man. It's something in the air in Miami. You got Jimmy Butler, you got Jorge Masvidal. I mean, my goodness, what's going on? But yeah, we'll delve into it. But Frank, I think you hit a lot of very good points with that. But we'll delve into it, I'm sure, even more.
So let me talk about the charges here, fellas. And wow, Jorge Masvidal, 37 years old. You'd think you'd know better. Like if you're like a 23-year-old, like being a little bit of a hothead, he's been around for a while, man. 37 years old. He faces 2 charges. 1 count of aggravated battery resulting in great bodily harm and 1 count of criminal mischief. In Florida, an aggravated battery charge can be elevated from a second-degree felony offense to a first-degree offense if the alleged offender wore a hood mask, or other device that concealed his or her identity. So that's something else he has to watch out for. So here is what the police report states. And by the way, the outlet that had it first was Local 10 down here, WPLG. So I got to throw a shout out to them. Obviously, every sports blog on the planet has picked it up since, but WPLG had it first. I like to shout out good journalism when I can. So the police report states that officers responded to a battery call outside the restaurant at 10:54 p.m. local time. I was in bed by that time for sure. There's no doubt about that. There, they met the victim, the quote-unquote victim, which we understand that to be Colby Covington, who fractured a tooth and suffered a wrist abrasion, alleging Masvidal ran up from his left and punched him twice in the face, once in the mouth and once in the left eye upon leaving the restaurant. Masvidal allegedly said, quote, "You shouldn't have been talking about my kids." The victim described a group of 3 or 4 other unknown males approaching him in an aggressive manner. Police said that at that point, the victim pushed one of the unknown males away and separated himself from the attackers and ran back into the Poppy Steak restaurant where he contacted police. And there wasn't any video of the actual alleged attack. There was video of afterwards and Covington talking to police. That makes it very clear that Covington is the quote unquote victim here. And I'm not saying quote unquote because I don't think it really happened. I'm saying that's the way it's listed in the news story. Covington is the victim here, even though he's not actually named in any of the documents. We understand that to be the case. And then another thing, and James, I'll go to you first on this one, which I find to be kind of interesting here is, not only did Masvidal allegedly commit this assault, but he and his manager were bragging about it on social media. They were asking, hey, do the show your face challenge to Colby. And they were, his manager made a joke about, him needing to go see a dentist. It's one thing to do something that you committed a crime, you may have committed a felony here, and you had the sense, at least in the moment, to wear a hood and try to conceal your identity. So you may have gotten away with something here. Don't go on social media and brag about it. That was really odd.
Yeah, I think it's a clear case of just Masvidal not having his head on straight with this. I really think the loss probably got to him. He sees that as a missed opportunity. And he probably will never get that opportunity again to get a rematch in the cage. So in his mind, and with all the, adrenaline and everything that's probably built up within him since that loss, he probably felt he had to do something like this and just didn't really think it through and didn't really think it straight. But I know we're going to rip on Masvidal a ton, with this act, that he allegedly did. But let's not completely absolve Colby Covington either from this. He brought this kind of energy on towards himself. And this is years in the making. This isn't something that, he's just for one fight had been talking about one person. I mean, he's really brought this kind of attention, brought this kind of energy for the sake of, being a bigger star in the UFC onto himself. And, does he deserve something like that? No one really deserves to be sucker punched, while you're eating dinner at a steakhouse. But I don't think there's anyone that's completely surprised. If there's one person you had to pick that this would happen to, it would probably be Colby Covington, because of the kind of energy and things that he had been talking about all this time. So I actually think this is a perfect time for him to pivot. And we've been kind of pleading to Colby for months to, hey, you don't have to go that far over the line. Just keep it towards the fighter. Keep it in the cage. You don't have to go to family. You don't have to go to kids. You don't have to go to countries. You don't have to, talk all this stuff. This is actually a perfect time for him to maybe do an interview, do a national interview and say, hey, you know what? After what happened here in this situation with Masvidal, I'm not going to cross the line as much anymore. It's not worth it. I think the door is open. It may never be this open, again. I think most people would understand and say, hey, you know what? He talked to do this stuff to get his star at a certain level. It worked. And then some stuff, outside of the cage happened that was probably too much, but he probably, isn't surprised that this kind of thing happened to him. And now, he's going to turn over a new leaf, not completely a new leaf. He'll still talk trash, but leave the kids out of it. It's not worth it. Leave the families out of it. The ex-wives and the countries and all that stuff. It's just not worth it, man. So anyway, I'd say let's not completely absolve Colby Covington and say that he was completely unaware that this kind of thing could happen to him.
Well, and at the very least, before I let Frank speak, it is worth pointing out that Colby, he seems to attract this sort of thing. You remember Kamaru Usman got into it with him in the buffet line at the Palms at Vegas a couple of years back. A few years ago, Fabricio Verdum threw a boomerang at him in Australia. So it's like what James is saying, like, is true. Like, it doesn't excuse that sort of behavior. Like, nobody should be assaulted. It's illegal. But these sort of things, from the point he started running his mouth about Brazil and then everything else, these sort of activities seem to follow Colby Covington around, Frank.
James is right. Colby is complicit in generating this kind of negative energy. I couldn't agree more. What I'm smiling about is trying to talk him out of it, because he's won 2 fights now. He got big money for a fight where both fighters are coming off a loss. That's a big win for trash talking for him. So you're going to have a hard time talking him out of it. And then he really legitimately doesn't like Jorge Masvidal. And now he's got George arrested and potentially facing a felony assault charge because his trash talk is so damn effective. So, you're right. You're both right. But he's just going to say to you, look, I reap huge rewards. Everyone's going to want to see me lose in my next fight. So I'm going to make double what I made last time. And by the way, this guy I really don't like very much, got that sucker, beat him down in the Octagon, and now he's arrested. So, I mean, He's loving it. I mean, it's like, it's the Trump syndrome. Everyone would tell him, Barr was out doing interviews last week, the former attorney general, and he was saying, people would tell me when I was out around the country, we love some of the policies, but can he just stop talking? No one could tell him to stop talking. He'd say, look how many people showed up at an event, So that's what Colby's doing. He's like, look, everyone's paying to watch me fight, and I threw a nemesis in jail. So, yeah, I mean, the trash talking will only get worse.
But Frank, the jail thing, you don't think that's a little too far? Let's say you have someone you don't like. You already beat him up in a fight. Do you wish that kind of harm on him, that you want him to be in jail and be away from his kids and away from his family and stuff like that? Like even wishing that or wanting that for an enemy, I feel like is a bit too far. Even though I know the dislike is there, but he already proved his point. Why be? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think Colby set out to the steakhouse to send George to jail. I mean, what I'm saying is that, it happened. I think it was in the rearview mirror for Colby, but it's a demonstration of the brutal effectiveness of his trash talking, So he knows he's weaponized it to a degree that neither Chael Sonnen was able to do, or even Conor McGregor. I mean, his trash talking has people going after him on the street. Like he has taken the marketability of trash talking to a whole new level, and you can despise it all day long, but it's making him rich.
Well, fellas, we can continue this conversation here because it's going to be part of the toss-up, at least the first part of it this evening. And I want to remind people, I don't think I even mentioned it yet on the show. I did mention it on social media. In about 17 minutes, the legend, 9-time UFC veteran, UFC commentator, reality TV show star, Dean Thomas, our very good friend, is going to join us around 6:30 tonight. I think also Frank's head coach, Brian Jackson, if he's not too sore from Frank beating him up all week.
Don't say that. He might be watching now, and I'll pay for that comment.
But Brian, if you're watching, I went rogue with that one. Frank did not reveal how badly he has maimed you in practice. I completely came up with that on my own. But I think Brian is going to join us a little bit later on as well. So it's going to be a fun one. But Frank, let's get into it, my friend. A new edition of The Toss-Up.
All right, well, just staying on point here, I'm going to start with the story we were just discussing. Was it a punk move for Colby Covington to press charges against Jorge Masvidal?
Guys, I'm going to argue no, it wasn't a punk move. And here's why. I'm not going to argue James's point that it kind of comes with the territory, and he's like, his chickens are coming home to roost, right? When you talk as much trash and the type of trash that Colby talks, it's no secret why he's been assaulted even previous times to this one. At the same time, like if you're Colby Covington and you've created this gimmick for yourself where you are legitimately hated by people in and out of the fight game, and now you feel like you can't even go out in public without potentially being attacked. I can understand. And like, I know a lot of people's judgment will be clouded by the fact that you hate Colby and everyone wants to say, oh, this guy's a punk. This guy's a bitch. They'll look for any excuse to drag him. And I get it. You don't like the guy personally, but at the same time, like if he's got the feeling in the back of his mind where anywhere he goes, he could get jumped by Masvidal or one of Masvidal's friends or just a random fan who doesn't like him, he might be thinking, and I'd probably think this way. I wouldn't put myself in his situation, but I'd probably think this way. If I don't press charges, then I'm just opening the door for other people to think, okay, this guy, he's okay with street justice. I can just attack him anytime I want to. So I don't know, man. I kind of feel like you have to press charges when you're literally assaulted. Now, the part of it that was kind of funny was this has been added on. He did also offer a complaint about his $90,000 Rolex being damaged in the assault, and there's $15,000 worth of damage, and people are like, oh, come on, you're complaining about the. It's an expensive watch, man. If I was wearing $90,000 on my wrist, and I need to, assuming he's telling the truth about that, if he's just like making this up to try and troll George, then that's not cool. But if he really does have damage to his Rolex, I mean, if it's for real, I can understand it. But listen, and again, I know people don't like Colby, and you just want to drag him, but I think if you feel like you can get attacked on the street anytime, you can't not be pressing charges. I can understand why he's doing it, James.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a punk move by Colby because even in his persona, he's never claimed not to be a law-abiding citizen. You know, that's not part of his shtick. His shtick is talking trash. His shtick is that he'll back it up in the octagon, but his shtick isn't that he's going to go out in the street and do, you know, as you mentioned, street justice or is okay with street justice. That's not part of the shtick. So I think this actually kind of fits in right in with, you know, his persona and you know, what he is. Look, I'm going to talk trash. If you want to meet me in the octagon, you can meet me in the octagon. But if something happens outside, you know, he's going to do what pretty much any law-abiding citizen would do. So yeah, no, I don't, especially after he won for 5 rounds and won convincingly, you know, when the odds were even, so to speak. So I don't think it was a punk move to press charges at all.
Sometimes I play lawyer on this show, and I'm going to do it again. Just to remind everybody, you as the victim don't actually have to press charges for the state attorney to decide to file charges. Because intimidation, things like that happen where somebody's like, you know, I'm scared all his people are going to come get me. But the state can pursue based on evidence they have, if they have enough evidence to pursue without you participating. So that's number one. But number two, I'm kind of in line with you guys. I think if I was Colby, I might walk away from it. You know, he's been arrested, you know, whatever. I might walk away from it. But the thing that would get me is that, you know, it's not like I was talking boundary crossing trash and then ducking a fight with you in the octagon. Like, I talked to trash. I met you in there. You had your shot, 5 rounds of it. It went my way dramatically. And so now this is going to happen. I think I'd be really pissed off. And the other thing people need to remember is, busted tooth, we laugh about it, whatever. But, you know, that takes him out of action for a little while, you know, and he also has a reconstructed jaw, courtesy of Kamaru Usman. So he has some issues there. So, you know, now how long does he have to go before he can make money? So I think those things would really make you want to, you know, press charges. Paddy Pimblett is now 2-0 in the UFC, and Dana White said his latest win proved he's the real deal. You agree?
Oh, Paddy the baddie. Oh, Paddy the baddie. I love those chants in the arena there in O2. I like Paddy Pimblett. In fact, when we were doing our show last week, I felt like I was really the only guy talking him up. You guys were trying to talk me down a little bit. But no, it's still too soon. Like, to call Paddy Pimblett the real deal, you know, after a victory against Kazula Vargas, who he was so highly favored against, that just it was just a warm body they threw at him so he could win in front of his home fans there in the UK. He's got a lot to prove. And I think what we were talking about last week, the UFC, I think, will continue to be very deliberate in the way that they make matches for him, because he's got a lot of charisma. He's got a lot of potential. And the fact that he is English, that's a market the UFC is now breaking back into because they couldn't do events there since before the pandemic, and they're back. They would love to have this guy available every few months. They go over to the UK. They can sell out arenas with Paddy Pimblett. So I can understand that's why Dana White is referring to him as the real deal. Like, he's a businessman. He's been doing this a long time. He's trying to pump him up. But no, a submission victory against Kazula Vargas, who did crack him in the face in the first few seconds of the fight. So I have found Pimblett, and you saw this in his first fight where he came back to win by knockout. He leaves his chin vulnerable, and he can take some shots. He can also dish him out. He's exciting to watch, and his ground game is superb, right? I mean, when people sometimes compare Conor McGregor coming up to Paddy Pimblett coming up, you know, you can compare the personalities, I guess, but you can't compare the types of fighters because Paddy Pimblett is an elite tactician with submissions. Conor McGregor is obviously not. You know, I've seen Paddy Pimblett in fights outside the UFC actually secure flying triangles to win fights, which is incredible. The hip toss, the judo move that he hit on Vargas to set up his submission was fantastic. That was an awesome move. The arena exploded. Paddy Pimblett is well on his way to being a star. But I'm still not convinced that if you put that guy up against legitimate top 10 competition in the UFC in his weight class, that he's winning fights. So, no, I'm not going to call him the real deal after this.
Yeah, I agree. Too early to call him the real deal. But I think this second win in a row sets him up to be the ideal fight night main event guy coming up. I could see his next two fights, especially if he wins, being, you know, the headliner for UFC Fight Night. He gets on national television or national streaming. They can do all these video pieces on him and preview pieces on him to kind of blow him up as a star. And then he can, you know, if he could win a couple more fights, he's going to bring in the ratings. As you mentioned, his personality's there. He has some pretty good skills. So yeah, even before he fights top 10 competition, I think he's already put himself in a pretty good seat to where he can headline some of these free cards, you know, from here on out.
I agree. I think when Paddy jumped over the fence and talked to Dana, he said, "Don't worry, I'm not there until, mate." Like, I think, you know, he's letting him know, like, I'm your poster boy for this market. So from that standpoint and his personality being what it is, he's the real deal in terms of being able to earn the organization a lot of money. Whether or not he can actually string together enough wins to become potentially a really big star, that remains to be seen because we haven't seen that kind of a test yet.
And he was very entertaining, like post-fight interview. And then I watched the post-fight show afterwards. Schwai, dude, I love these afternoon cards where, like, I get through the post-fight show and it's like 7 o'clock still. I'm like, oh, my entire night is still in front of me. He was great. Like he and Molly McCann, who are so close, they were doing like post-fight interviews together, just oozing charisma. Like, I love, like, I already, as you guys all know, those watching, and Frank and James, you knew I liked Paddy Pimblett even going into this fight. I like him even more afterwards because he's got the stuff, like the marketing, the whole package, the interviews. I feel like I can understand him a little bit better when he speaks. Like, he's speaking.
I still need subtitles, bro.
So no, and like I hope he keeps winning because I think he's good for the sport.
How do you think the fight will go this Saturday with Curtis Blaydes and Chris Daukaus on ESPN? Another free one.
Yeah, and honestly, this is a good fight card. I think there's like the Matt Brown fight. I think against Barberena. I think it's going to end up being fight of the night, possible fight of the year candidate.
Matt Brown, man.
It's going to be hard though for this fight. This event to top what we had last week, and we'll talk more about it at the end of the show. I thought that this event in London was just awesome, fireworks top to bottom. This main event, though, I think it's going to be one-sided in favor of Curtis Blaydes. I think Chris Daukaus, he's got good hands, could maybe touch him up a little bit, but he's got no match for Blaydes' wrestling. I think Blaydes can just dictate where this fight takes place. He's a pretty big favorite in this one, and I understand why. I think this is going to be heavyweight division can be crazy because it only takes one punch to change a fight, but this should be a relatively easy win for Razor Blaydes.
Yep. Too much experience, too much wrestling. And once, as you mentioned, once Blaydes gets him on the ground with those elbows, man, I mean, he can cut him up pretty easily and make it really nasty. So, yeah, I see a lot of ground and pound in this one in favor of Curtis Blaydes.
You're both absolutely right. Although in that division, man, you just never know. You know, that's what makes the division so exciting. There's definitely a puncher's chance in that division.
So a few more thoughts before Dean's going to join us in about 6 minutes. Going back to the UFC in London this past weekend, and we telegraphed it a little bit in last week's show that outside of just like not having, a marquee main event, to sell a pay-per-view, and this wasn't a pay-per-view, like that fight card had all the makings of being like a pay-per-view caliber fight card, and it delivered. I mean, you go through even from the prelims, you had only 3 decisions on the entire card. You had a submission to open up the night. You had 2 decisions in a row, which was rare for this one. You had Paul Craig submitting Nikita Krylov, and it was unfortunate since, Krylov being from Ukraine, I think we all wanted him to win that fight. You had TKO, technical submission. Then you get into the main card, KO, Ilya Topuria, just he knocked Jai Herbert into another freaking galaxy. And listen, unfortunately,
Patty was wrong on that one.
Yeah, Patty was wrong on that one. Molly McCann had like one of the knockouts of the decade with that spinning elbow that she pulled on Luana Carolina, and that was in the 3rd round. And McCann was basically dominating that fight. Like, I really thought that was like I actually did really well betting on that card. One of the few fights I got wrong was this one because I just thought Carolina was a class above. It might have just been the England factor because so many of the English fighters just did so well. The crowd was great, but Molly McCann looked sensational. And then right when Carolina finally, it seemed like she was finding her rhythm a little bit, she gets KTFO'd by that spinning elbow. Gunnar Nelson, in his return from a long absence, got a nice win against Takashi Sato. That dominant one-sided fight. I wasn't necessarily expecting a finish here because that's not really what Gunnar Nelson does. So that was one of the few decisions. Then you had Paddy Pimblett, explosive rear naked choke against Vargas. Arnold Allen, bro, guys, we got to talk about that a little bit. So Dan Hooker is now a featherweight, looked very big for the weight class, but he got pieced up by Arnold Allen, another British fighter that got the home victory. And Allen fighting that guy, it's like fighting against a human tornado. Just the hooks are coming at you nonstop, the pressure. He landed the first couple of punches onto Hooker's jaw and then just couldn't stop landing after that. Eventually, the referee just had to get in and like, enough is enough. You're going to kill this guy. It was going to be like Ivan Drago against Apollo Creed if he didn't step in. So that was an unbelievable win for Arnold Allen, who is looking like he's got a bright future, guys. Frank, I'll start with you.
Well, I just wanted to ask you guys, like, how much of that home crowd or nationalism, how much do you think that actually elevates a fight game? Because, certainly in the history of our shows together, Alex, we've talked to a number of fighters and we get differing opinions. But it's amazing. I can remember when when Brazil was taking over the sport, so many fights were down there and how they would just fight differently. They would be almost different fighters in their own country. And I just wonder if you think that is a real factor or if it just feels that way.
I think, James, it was a combination of that because there clearly was great energy. And they hadn't been in Europe for a long time. So you kind of remember, it's like watching a soccer game, like the way the fans have like their organized chant. You don't really get that in Vegas. Like, it's just kind of like yays and boos. But in England, it's like they're singing, like, it's amazing. They're singing. So I think that there was some of that. I think the crowd, like I was getting pumped up just watching it from home. But then also, I think it was equal parts home cooking and equal parts advantageous matchmaking.
Matchmaking, yes.
The UFC knew what they were doing there.
Yeah, most of the British guys were favorites coming in with that. But the Arnold Allen fight, man, I was surprised how quickly he dispatched Dan Hooker. And you never know when a guy like Hooker or anyone really goes down in weight. Maybe they lose their chin, they lose some of their durability. The weight cut might be tougher for them. So all those factors could be in play. But I believe that's 9 in a row for Allen. And I watched some of his highlights going into the fight. And man, he's, like you mentioned, he's a tornado. And it's fury, but it's fury with aim, if that makes sense. Like he's not just swinging wild and missing and gassing himself out. Like he has this fury about him, but he also has like pinpoint accuracy with it to where he may throw like 6-7 punches in a row and land like 5 of them to where, the opponent just can't take those many shots to the body and to the jaw. So he's pretty impressive. I want to see him against some top competition. from here on out and see if they can withstand his pressure.
At this pace, you're going to.
Yeah. Well, let's talk, Frank, about the main event, because Tom Aspinall did everything I thought he could do, but in even more dominant fashion. He's a 28-year-old heavyweight, and for that weight class, being 28, you might as well be 19. Like he's like 6 years younger than some of the best guys in the division. So I think you can call him a prospect even at 28 years old. He is so quick and so light on his feet. He has the physicality of a welterweight fighting at heavyweight. I think that Aspinall can be incredibly dangerous. He completely punked Alexander Volkov, who I know is not what he used to be, but he's a tough out for anybody. I mean, former Bellator champion, I should say. So I didn't think it would be this easy for Aspinall, who gets a straight armbar, 345 into the first round, and was touching him up. And then the takedown that he set up the submission with, it's perfectly timed. Like it was absolutely textbook the way that he shot in right when Volkov was coming forward and was a little bit off balance. So it was about as perfect of a performance as you can get.
Yeah, it was. And there was kind of an Anderson Silva moment when he went back and evaded the one punch. And he's, bigger picture, because you just outlined the fight beautifully, but bigger picture is just, I love the athleticism in the division, because you correctly pointed out, like a welterweight in that division. I mean, that division for so long was so devoid of that kind of athleticism. And when you see it and you see the size of these guys, I mean, it's terrifying. It at this pace, it will become the favorite division the way it always was and probably always will be in boxing.
Yeah, it used to be a time when a guy like Cain Velasquez was an outlier, a guy that had a gas tank, was quick, light on his feet at heavyweight, and he would be the only guy, in his division. Now it seems like, you're starting to have a handful of guys, that can do that. And Aspinall, Stipe is one of those guys. John Jones, whenever he steps in as a heavyweight, is obviously one of those guys. I mean, there's going to be a good 5 or 6, guys in that division that's going the lighter route and the more athletic route, to heavyweight. So it will be interesting to see over time if that's the right way to go, or is it better to go bigger and bulky, which has always been traditional, is to be the bigger person and just knock everyone out, or use your weight as an advantage against opponents.
Great. It's the age-old question. I'm usually of the mind, Frank, that speed kills. Right. I mean, size is important, and heavyweight's so weird because most weight classes you have to make the same weight. Like you may be a little bit different by the time you step into the octagon, but you at least have to hit the same weight as your opponent. Whereas in heavyweight, you could be technically anywhere between 206 and 265 pounds. So you get much wider ranges of size. But to me, I think speed is the biggest weapon there. And let's bring in our featured guest of the evening. This guy, are you jet lagged, Dean? You're racking up the sky miles. You've just come back from London to New York, from New York to Ohio, because you're going to be in Columbus for the ESPN event. Like, when was the last time you slept?
On the plane. That's why I don't get jet lag. I sleep on the plane, man. I'm out before we back up. So when the pilot about to back up, I'm already out.
You do the neck thing?
Nah, man, that's a little too bougie for me. I use the person next to me's shoulder.
I'm sure they love that.
Yeah, they can't do nothing about it.
That's true.
And Dean, as usual, he was great on the broadcast in London. I'm sure he's going to be great again this coming weekend. Before we get into the fights, past and future, we started the episode, Dean, talking about. I know you've been jet setting, but I'm guessing you've seen the news about Jorge Masvidal, who's been charged with assault and battery for sucker punching Colby Covington outside of a restaurant in Miami. What are your thoughts, man? Because there obviously a lot of people don't like Colby Covington. They're calling him, a punk for pressing charges. How did you feel about this incident?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ways that you can look at this. First off, I want to say I'm surprised it took this long for somebody to run up on Colby. You know what I'm saying? I'm truly surprised it took this long for somebody to do it. And I don't know why we're surprised. Why are we surprised, and why are we hating on George? George is a street kid. We know this. So how can we look at him and be like, oh, my God, a street kid did some street things? This is what he does. Now, I'm not going to condone his behavior. I'm not like that. I don't do that type of stuff. But this is what people like Colby get. Like, it's not, and I just put a tweet out about this. It's not like he ran up on Stephen Thompson. He ran up on a guy who's got more enemies in the game than anybody I know. He's got no friends in the game, got more enemies than anybody I know. And when he's dealing with guys that can fight, that are street guys that just happen to get paid to fight. So I'm surprised that it took this long for somebody to run up on him. I'm not surprised that he pressed charges neither, because, and what I realize this as well, is that, and I've always been like trying to understand this psychology of like that Karen mentality, where you can just yell at people and say what you want and feel like you can talk to people any type of way. And then when somebody hits you, you go, oh my God, how dare you assault me? I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't hit people for no, I mean, I don't hit people. I don't get, but I also don't talk trash to people, because I realize that that's a consequence. And I realize that that's what happens when you open your mouth. Like, that is a part of like what people do. Like, if you talk trash, like, expect somebody to hit you. That's why I learned how to fight. Really, like, that's the number one reason why I learned how to fight, was so that if somebody tried to assault me, I can defend myself, because I can't control people's actions. And one of the ways I don't control people's actions is I don't tell people what to do, and I don't talk trash to them. So when somebody talks trash to you, you can expect to get hit.
You know, and again, I know you said it very well, and like you're not excusing that behavior, and you said you wouldn't do it. So like I'm not arguing with anything you said there. I'm just like I'm annoyed, and we talked about this with Frank and James. I'm just annoyed on Masvidal's behalf, because like if you wanted to physically injure Colby Covington, you had a great opportunity to do that just a couple weeks prior in the Octagon.
But that's not what this is about. This wasn't about, like, see, this is the part where I think everybody is missing, is that they think that like that's the sport. That's sport. That's 100% sport. And they was getting paid to do that. That was all about the bag. But that beef still existed. They still hated each other. That beef still existed. So even if Masvidal had won the fight, I still believe he would have ran up on him, because like that's what this is about. This was about, you disrespected me, you disrespected my people, you deserve to be punished. And it doesn't mean, hey, meet me in the parking lot or meet me in the schoolyard. This means I'm getting you by any means necessary. That's the way war works. And me and Josh Cohen always talk about it. That's the reason why the British lost the Revolutionary War, is that they announced to the Americans that they were coming. They had the worst strategy in the history of war. They had a marching band and they wore bright red suits. You don't announce to your enemy that you're coming when you're trying to hurt them.
That's how everybody fought back then, though, D.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. But that's not. But the part of warfare is the element of surprise. Again, I'm not condoning what Masvidal did. All I'm saying is that I understand the psychology behind that more so than I understand the psychology of thinking that you can say what you want, do what you want, and not have to pay the price for it.
But
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Dean. But so then to put the perspective from Colby, I was arguing earlier that he's weaponized trash talking to such a point that I think this makes him even worse, a trash talker, because now he knows, okay, I beat you in the Octagon and I got paid a ton of money, and it was two guys coming off a loss, and we get a headlining fight because I talk trash and everybody wants to see the beef get squashed. And then my trash talking is so effective that I can make you rush me in the street and get arrested. I think Colby considers that a win, because I think he legitimately doesn't like George either.
100%.
Yeah, right.
He's gonna walk away with this thinking, oh, see, you had to run up on me in the street because you couldn't beat me in the cage, and you had to do this to me. You had to do that. For sure, he's gonna think that's a win. But for Masvidal and that street mentality, it's like this. But I knocked your tooth out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You had to go to the hospital. So you had to, or the dentist or whatever. But you know, I don't know where this goes from here. But again, I don't understand that psychology of being able to freely think that you can freely treat people the way you want to, as long as you don't put their hands on them, and then expect them to give you the respect and go, all right, I'm going to warn you when I'm coming for you. And allow you an opportunity to defend yourself. No, that's not the way street justice works. It works like, listen, you did me wrong, and I'm not giving you an opportunity to shoot me or to even defend yourself. I'm getting you. And that's why, for me, Colby always had to walk around looking over his shoulder. And I don't know why he can be surprised by this or why anybody else is surprised by this, because he's always looking over his shoulder because he treats people like trash. And if you treat people like trash, that's what happens to you.
I think the only thing he was surprised about, Dean, was that he knew where he was.
Yeah. How do you know I'm here? Well, I mean, and that too is like, I mean, you call yourself the king of Miami. You're not even from Miami. And the person that you beat is from Miami, who's the real king of Miami. So, like, to me, I don't know where this goes from here, but none of it surprised. The only thing that really surprises me is that how many people are like, how could George do this? And then and obviously, like you said, Alex, he had 25 minutes to do it. But again, like, that wasn't enough. That had nothing to do with the beef. The beef was you disrespecting me and you got to pay for that.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving you a fair chance.
Dean, I was just curious if you ever had an opponent personally in your career that after the fight you felt there was unfinished business.
No, I never. I always, again, and I talked about this, put this on my Instagram today. Like, for me, fighting was a way to make a living and a way to test myself. It was never about beef. It's not about fighting. For most fighters, ain't about beef. It's about making that check, getting paid, and testing yourself, and the honor in that. If I had a beef with somebody, a legit beef with somebody, I wouldn't like Dustin Poirier said, I'm not going to let this guy make a bag off of me. I never wanted to fight somebody and help him make money off of me. So all the people that I fought, I legitimately liked them. Now, if I was getting paid Masvidal money, I'll fight anybody, you know what I'm saying? Even if I hated him. So obviously that's why he fought Colby. But there was never a situation where I was like, oh, I got to get this guy. Because if that's for me, like, if that was the case, it wouldn't have been in the octagon. It would have been in the street anyway. I'm going at you in the street anyway.
Do you guys think, and Dean, you can speak to this because you hang around him, but do you think Dana White makes another fight between these two guys based on what's happened?
Doubtful. I think, this is somewhat of an eye opener, I think, and that's to really open up everybody's eyes to show that, this is real life. Like, we thought, like, the Conor and Khabib thing it got out of hand, but it didn't get, nobody got hurt. You know what I'm saying? But this is real life, and this is what real life people do. And sometimes I think that because the sport has been so, I think for lack of better terms, I maybe want to say gentrified in a way, where people think that, oh, they're sportsmen. They fight for a living and they solve their problems by getting in a cage with a referee and solving it that way. And then when it's over, they're going to shake hands and be sportsmen about it. This is not, for some of these guys, it's not a gentrified sport. For some of them, they're just doing it because that's how they make money. And guys like, Mike Perry would have probably done the same thing. They probably, Sean Strickland, like, these guys, they fight for money, but if you disrespect them in a way where they're disrespected and don't like you, they're coming at you in the street for sure. And don't be surprised by it, because this is the way they live. And if you don't like it, it's still not for you to judge them, because that's the way they grew up and that's all they know.
Great breakdown here. Dean Thomas is with us, and you were part of the broadcast in London this past weekend. That was an awesome event. I mean, almost all finishes, ridiculous finishes on the card. And let me start with, wasn't the main eventer, but he was the crowd pleaser and very popular in his home country. Paddy Pimblett got the nice submission victory against Kazula Vargas. Obviously it was a fight he was heavily favored in. He went out there and took care of business. He's 2-0 now in the UFC. He's got the recipe, right? I mean, Pimblett, he's got the charisma. I can barely understand his Liverpool accent, but he seems to talk the talk and say some great things. And I'm really bullish on Paddy Pimblett. Obviously, he's not proven it yet against the top competition. So how good do you think he is as a prospect, and how far can he go?
I mean, it depends. I mean, the thing about prospects is that when you fight as a prospect, it's not what you show in that fight. It's the potential that you show in that fight. And Patty, I don't know what his ceiling is, but he's going to have to get better in certain areas if he wants to have his fight career and his stardom be aligned. Like his defense certainly has to get better. And, there's some things that has to improve on him. I'm not saying he can't do it. So that's yet to be seen. Like, it's almost like, I guess, when you get a quarterback in the NFL, like you don't know what you got until about 3 years in. And I think that's why the UFC structures the pay the way they do it. And maybe I'll talk about that in a minute. But in terms of star power, man, does Patty have it. I mean, he truly, truly has it. He really owned that crowd. I mean, that was really a coming out party for him and Molly. I hung out with them in Liverpool. I stayed back a couple of days and got to hang out with them in Liverpool. And that was really a coming out party for both of them. I was so happy for them and so just excited to see them, really fit this and really accept what they've created there. And it was really good for them. I've known Molly for a little while. Again, I fought her. My girl fought her, and I've known her for a while. But to watch her grow and fill into this role was really exciting. And she's still so humble about it. She's like, I can't believe all this. I just can't believe it. And I'm so excited and happy for them.
That's awesome. And right before you came on, we were talking about Tom Aspinall's performance in the main event. He has the type of athleticism you would expect from like a 170 pounder, not a heavyweight. And like for that division, he's young. I mean, 28 years old. That's like a teenager in the heavyweight division these days. What did you think of the performance, and what do you think is next for him? Because he called out Tai Tuivasa, which I think would be a really interesting fight, and I think that'd be a fun fight in the buildup. So do you think that should be next for him?
Yeah, so, first off, let me say this. I don't know if I've ever seen a heavyweight quite like Tom Aspinall. That is that skilled all around, that athletic, and that self-aware of his position in the game, who's self-aware enough to know I need more experience. Like, I don't want to fight. I need a little bit more experience before I can challenge some of these higher guys. So, and when I was talking about potential, when I look for fighters who I think can make it, I look at potential, not just performance. I look at potential. Tom Aspinall has all the potential in the world to be a next level heavyweight. Like the greatest, possibly like the greatest heavyweight we've ever seen, because he's so good at so many different things that it's unbelievable. And like, I don't know how he's going to be off of his back, but I mean, if his other skill sets are any indication of what he can do in other areas, I mean, we may be looking at, something great here. But again, his attitude towards fighting is what really separates him from everybody else. He's very humble, and he's just like, hey, listen, I need a little bit more experience. I'm young in the game. I want to be able to take my time. And I love that about him. And I think that the sky is the limit for Tom Aspinall. And I'm very excited about his future. I mean, he's really got a lot of room till he hits his ceiling.
This is a strong endorsement. Well, let's talk about the fight card coming up. You're going to be on the broadcast again, UFC on ESPN, Columbus, Ohio, this weekend. It's going to be really tough for these fights to live up to last week, as they set the bar very high. There are a couple of fights, though, on this card that I like a lot. The one Ariel Helwani, I'm sure, would refer to this as the people's main event. We've got a clash between hometown guy Matt Brown against Brian Barberena. Do you think this fight is going to be the all-out, guns blazing type of war that I expect it's going to be?
I can almost promise you that it will not be that.
Ooh, why?
And here's the reason why. Is because no way Matt Brown, how old is he now? He's got to be close to 40 now.
Yeah, about 40 years old.
Yeah, no way does Matt Brown, being close to 40, go out and
41.
Yeah, and go out and fight that way. I think that he goes out and fights I think he fights It'll be some fireworks. Don't get me wrong on this. Like that is in his blood. That's in his DNA. But I think that he goes out, and while Barberena is going to expect a full-on firefight, I think Matt Brown holds back a little bit and goes, I'm going to fight a little smarter now. I'm 41 years old. I'm going to fight a little smarter now. And he can afford to do that in a fight against the guy who's going to expect him to go out and just brawl. Now, if he was fighting a more intelligent fighter, I would expect Matt Brown to go out and brawl. But the fact that he is fighting Brian Barberena, I don't expect him to be in an all-out war. I think that at 41, he goes, I need to preserve myself a little better, and I think that and I think Matt Brown wins the fight by that strategy.
Now, I was going to ask you that as well, because this is the type of fight where I need Dean Thomas's help, because the last I checked, it's straight up pick 'em fight. Minus 110, minus 110. There's no favorite. There's no underdog. So I'm like, we're talking to me here. I got to bet on every fight. So I need to know. Now I'm going to bet on Matt Brown now based on what you said. I would put my money on Matt Brown. And remember when Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonner first fought? I mean, it was obviously the greatest fight of its time up until that point. And then when they fought again, we expected that same thing. And what did both guys do? Yeah. Both guys said, all right, he's expecting a brawl. I'm going to out-technique him. Yeah. That's what Matt Brown is going to do in this fight. He's going to go, he's expecting a brawl. I'm going to out-technique him. And that's why it's not going to be a brawl. There'll be moments of when they brawl, but I think most of it will be Matt Brown trying to fight a smarter fight. And I think Matt Brown is a better fighter than Brian Barberena. He's more experienced. He's a better fighter. And I think he wins this fight either way.
Dean, I got one more question for you personally, and it's months in the making, but it's a hot topic now. Conor McGregor's talking about fighting Kamaru Usman. I got to get your take on that. Good idea, bad idea? Is this, propaganda from Conor, or is he serious about it? Just what's your thoughts?
Well, one thing we know about Conor is that he's serious about everything he says. And I don't know if that's the drugs or but he's very serious about everything he says, and he tries. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he doesn't do it, he at least puts in a great effort to try. I think it's a great idea for Kamaru Usman.
Yeah.
I think it's a terrible idea for Conor. But for Kamaru Usman, I hope it happens, because that's an easy fight. Listen, it's almost, to me, in the best case scenario is that Conor does get up to chance to fight Usman, because the last thing I want to see is Usman get beat up by Canelo Alvarez.
Oh my God!
Yeah, because Canelo even said he's not going to carry him. So it's like, and that's so like that. The last thing we want to see is that. So like, I want Usman to make his bag, and I want him to make it in a way where he can do it and look good and maintain his dignity. And I think the best way to do that is to beat Conor McGregor.
Yeah, and Usman could probably win that fight however he wanted to. I mean, the easy road would be put him on his back, but it's like maybe he wants to be more exciting, and he just outstrikes him because he's so much bigger. So yeah.
I think that fight's gonna happen. I actually do, because Kamaru's kind of cleaned stuff out temporarily in his division. I mean, him jumping to the front of the line in the lightweight division would create a lot of negative commentary, I would think. But like you say, feeding him to Kamaru Usman just makes everybody money. And since
but you know what? Like with Leon, like he still has to get through Leon, and then it could be a timing issue, because Dana, not that Dana wouldn't take it away from Leon, but like with Leon, been waiting for so long, and he's probably going to get the fight. And when champs, man, what happens with champs? If Kamaru gets through Leon, he's going to hurt something. He's be out for another 9 months. Is Conor really going to wait, a year and a half to fight Kamaru Usman? Doubtful. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with all that.
Well, best of luck to you. I know you're going to knock it out of the park. Enjoy the fights. Enjoy the broadcast this weekend. Actually, on the way out, before we let you run, Curtis Blaydes, Chris Daukaus. I think it's going to be pretty academic for Blaydes, but what do you think?
It seems like that, and like you almost want to expect it. Fights are predictable for Curtis Blaydes, because in all the heavyweights, with the exception of Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blaydes probably has the best all-around skill set. I mean, his wrestling, his ground and pound. He's not a bad striker. He's not a great one, but he's not a bad striker in MMA standards. But he's just unreliable. You can't trust him. Yeah. And that's the problem with Curtis Blaydes, is it like, even the fights that he's lost, I was like, man, he should have won that fight. The fights that were close, I'm like, man, he should have destroyed that guy. But then sometimes he shows up, and he does, because he has a great skill set. But I think that there's something that doesn't always connect with him, that doesn't allow him to perform at his best. So I'm still predicting him to win against Chris Daukaus, just because I don't think Chris Daukaus is going to be able to stop his shot.
Right.
But it's probably going to be an ugly fight, and probably won't be all that exciting. But and it's going to be bad for Chris Daukaus, because this will be his second loss in a row, and he kind of doesn't deserve that, as a guy who I think that they like, and he's a good dude, and I think he deserves a different opponent. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not a good opponent for him. I wish he had got a different, better opponent.
Because what was it? It was Tuivasa last time out, right?
No, he fought Derek Lewis.
Oh, that's right, Derek Lewis. I knew it was somebody who knocks people out a lot. Yeah, Derek. Yeah, that was even tougher than fighting Tuivasa. At least I feel Tuivasa did beat Lewis, but it's a tough fight.
And the last thing I'm going to say, and I promised that I would say this, and that was talking about Paddy Pimblett and the pay structure. Paddy's on a regular contract like everybody else when they start out, and everybody goes, yeah, but he's a star. But look what happened when they paid all these other stars like big money coming out the gate. Hector Lombard, all these other guys, when they came out the gate and they paid these big stars money, they underperformed, and they didn't do well, and they end up getting cut. And so this is the reason why I think that it's not a bad thing for Paddy to start off on this contract, because we want to see what the UFC wants to see what they got first. And then, but listen, and Paddy just signed a mega deal with Barstool. So like, by being on the UFC and having that platform, he's getting paid, but the UFC is not going to pay him right away until they know what they got. So that's my answer to that.
I love it. Enjoy the fights this weekend. Dean Thomas, 9-time UFC veteran, UFC commentator, radio host, comic, improv, actor. There's nothing this guy doesn't do, Dean. Thank you so much for taking the time.
All right, fellas. Peace.
Peace, Dean Thomas. I love it. So, and listen, Dean has done some work on our own champ here, our physical specimen, Frank Zaffere. By the way, Frank, I got to tell you, man, I don't know if it's like the cut of the shirt you're wearing. You look like you're getting stronger. Like the traps are getting bigger. So I can see the changes in you.
People are telling me that. It's strange. I got to tell you, like, one of the most humbling things is like all that weightlifting on the shoulders doesn't matter one bit. Couple rounds of boxing and the shoulders feel like they're going to fall apart. Like it's just completely different, I don't know what you would call it. Completely different fibers. I don't know what's going on, but it's starting just starting over basically. So this is the new Frank.
You look like a guy. I would not want to mess with you. I wouldn't want to sneak up on you and sucker punch you at Poppy's Steakhouse or anything like that. I'm steering clear of Frank Zaffere.
Don't break my Walgreens glass. I'll press charges, fool.
Even so. Now, the man who's responsible for this transformation, Frank Zaffere's head coach, is with us. I always love getting these updates, and we probably don't even talk about this enough, but we touch on it every episode. I'm so proud of Frank, and he's doing something that I don't have the balls to do. I didn't see James Walker volunteering to do this either. Where Frank Zaffere, he's putting himself through an MMA training camp, and he does want to get a fight at the end of this. The problem is he's like Khamzat Chimaev. Like it's hard to find somebody who's willing to fight this guy. Like it's nobody wants any of that smoke. And Brian Jackson, who's a former professional fighter, he's trained with the likes of BJ Penn and Frankie Edgar. So he means business. He has been responsible for Frank Zaffere's transformation. We're a few weeks now into this experiment, Brian, and I'd like to get your side of it, because from Frank, I'm getting generally positive reviews of the way things are going so far. Do you feel like your star pupil has been stepping up?
Yeah, he's absorbing things well. I'm glad he's getting the compliments. He's actually done this week. We've had to stick to boxing just due to some circumstance, not being able to grapple. But he did, I would say, almost 35 rounds of mitts, and he did 12 rounds 2 days in a row, 3-minute rounds, 1-minute rest, at a pretty, there's some technique in there, there's some explaining, but it's pretty steady for the most part. And, not a lot of people would be able to do that right now. And all the movements are looking clean, and the technique is looking more clean each time. And he's starting to have some little epiphanies, which that's kind of like how fighting is. You start to kind of, and these little aha moments. So he's having a few of those. So I would say, based off the circumstances, I don't think it could have went any better from this point.
Love it. And Frank, I want to ask you. No, it's great. And so, okay, now that you've been training hard for a few weeks now, and to kind of pick up on what Brian was saying there, because, I know how it would be for me in the limited amount of work that I've done in combat, that just thinking so much. Have you reached a point where it starts to feel more instinctive?
No, I mean, I'm not getting there yet, but I'm a million miles from that. But I'm looking forward to the two of us going to see Dean again, not because I want Dean to say that I'm making progress as much as I want him to behold what a good coach this guy is. Like, I mean, honestly, look, I'm no expert, but I know I was starting from zero, or am starting from zero. So if he can get me functional, I can't imagine what he could do to somebody with talent right now. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting up there with Dean again. And we're thinking about Brian. I don't want to take the words out of his mouth, but he mentioned that maybe we try to do that next week or two. I know Dean's traveling a lot, but it'd be fun to get back up there. And that might be a good time to do some show stuff, because then we'd have Dean there too. So it might be a good opportunity, but it'd be a long drive for you, Alex.
I'm willing to make it happen. If maybe I can get like some sponsorship money. I'm gonna hit up like some of these gas stations, maybe to pay for my fuel to get up there. We'll figure it out. I'm gonna get like a Texaco sponsorship just to sponsor my drive up there. So like Brian, what do you think? Just to kind of follow up on some of the recent conversations we've had, what disciplines are Frank strongest at, and maybe do you start to kind of tailor the I'll let Brian answer. What aspects of his game are strongest, and do you think you'll reach a point, maybe you're already reaching the point, where maybe you want to focus more on the strengths? Is that how you approach it, or do you focus more on correcting the weaknesses?
Well, this week we've kind of just focused on striking, like I said, and I think that's the best part, is because that's where the fight always starts. So you want to be able to be comfortable exchanging. If you're not comfortable with your hands, it makes the takedowns just so difficult. And then really what we're focusing on is just having a good pummel game. Basically being able to pummel for clinch via body lock and via Muay Thai clinch, and just having some submissions to set up off that. It's going to be sort of like, just like a video game. You got your players like, different type of moves, and you just stick with those, and then just mash buttons on the other end. And that's, we're just going to have a couple of different set things, and then just some basic fundamental striking, which I think is, fun with fundamentals is usually how you get it done. And, nothing needs to be flashy, just effective.
Brian, when you're starting from scratch, how do you coach the submission game? Because there's so many submissions out there. It's not like, with the stand-up where it's jab, hook, straight. There's 50 different submissions out there. So how do you figure out what submission works best for Frank, or what will work best for Frank in time?
Well, I mean, when you look at MMA, you got to kind of look at the percentages. So the most heavily percentage-wise is basically rear naked choke. So you're going to have to know how to defend that. Guillotines are probably the other one. People getting tired, taking bad shots. But a lot of it's philosophy. Like I told him things like hand fighting. Like there's never a wrong time to fight hands, So basically getting out of any submission, you're going to do that. So it's just little things like that. If he gets stuck, they're like sort of like a safety cord on the parachute. Just little things we can do. I kind of show him how some things are interchangeable. The same way you do a rear naked choke is the same way you defend, you know, an armbar off. So it's just little things like that. And there's not too much you got to overload. We're not going to look for escapes from Peruvian neckties or something. You know, we're just going to look how to defend the basics, really. You know, if we get stuck in there with something that's, you know, out of left field, it just is what it is at that point. You know, that's a fluke incident. I think just preparing for the basics is going to get the best results, you know.
I mean, I've always been of the mind that your best defense is good offense. So I want you to maybe teach Frank a submission so crazy, like just don't even go over the basics. Like don't teach him how to do any rear naked chokes or any guillotines. Like teach him like a gogo plata or like a flying triangle. That way, if he goes up against an opponent who's probably at a similar skill set and experience level, they're probably not going to be prepared to stop the gogo plata. So if you teach Frank something really, really crazy, we can get the greatest highlight reel finish of all time.
I think Frank might tap out from doing a go-go plata versus the other guy. So,
oh, this is too good.
Guys, I gotta tell you, I've been involved in my career in countless professional relationships, and obviously coach, you know, aspiring person. It's a form of a professional deal. I've never had more confidence in someone professionally than what this guy's doing. Like his ability, I can't overstate it enough. Like I can't wait for you to see, because like from zero, he's a miracle worker. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's not hype me up too much, because we still got to find an opponent. So
yeah, well, he's helping with that too. He's soup to nuts. He's the whole store. He's also gonna choose that opponent carefully.
Well, I mean, apparently, like Chris points out here, Jorge Masvidal is taking fights. He's out there looking for street fights. You know, call him out.
I don't want to fight in front of a steakhouse. I mean, that's not going to be.
That's true. That's true. Well, Brian Jackson, man, I can't thank you enough for taking some time, and we'll see you out there soon. Thank you for all the great work you're doing with Frank, and thank you for the stories.
Yeah, I want to touch on that Jorge thing real quick.
Yeah. Please do.
Because I really hope it doesn't get to this, but just so we have this on tape, I'd be really sad if in the next 5 years there's a UFC related death due to like some sort of street justice, like let me get you back, keeping it real. Like it's getting so out of hand. I mean, you know, I don't know. And honestly, I really think the only reason Colby's pressing charges is so that people know that his 90,000 Rolex watch was damaged. You know, I really think that's the only thing, and probably so he can claim, you know, insurance on his dental work. So, but you know, it's enough's enough. You know, like, you know, at the end of the day, like we come from there. Charles Barkley, like, I'm an athlete, not a role model. It's like, dude, you are a role model. And I know we're savages and we're in there being human cockfighters, but you know even what I did regionally, you know, I stepped out of the ring one time in Oregon after taking a terrible defeat, and I had a 10-year-old kid ask me to sign his poster, and you know I got to jab him in the stomach a little bit, ask him if he's going to fight one day, and you know that whole loss just for that moment was worth it, you know, and that kid today is, you know, 18, 19, and maybe he's, you know, aspiring to be a fighter, you know. And I remember when I was like 7 years old and I was at a pro wrestling thing. You'll like this story, James. And one of the jobs, you know, one of the guys that just goes out there and gets slaughtered, he saw me like wanting to get high fives, and he like rubbed my head, and I, you know, I'll never forget that guy. I don't even know who the heck he was, but you know, these guys make an impact on people's lives, and to go out there just the way he did, it literally looks like teenagers, you know. The film, I don't know if you guys saw the film. I mean, it's terrible quality, but yeah. it's so not what we do, and it's so. I feel like it set fighters back a little bit. I mean, we're on ESPN now. You know, Stephen A. Smith is going to be saying equivalents about this tomorrow. I just hope like fighters. I hope Jorge doesn't lose all this big contract money, but he very well might. And you got guys like Calvin Ridley who's going to lose $9 million for playing DraftKings.
I know.
And if Jorge Masvidal, you got to kind of make an example. You just rewarded the guy, made him the third highest paid fighter, and you turn around and you do this. I don't know. I hate to sound like a dad, but
no. And honestly, the thing about what you're saying, like you're 100% correct. And I think a lot of the people with the way that they're reacting to the story, they just cannot separate their hatred for Colby Covington. I think a lot of people, like if this was anybody else, and like it does matter, because still, like, assault is assault. Like he's been charged with felonies here. I don't know. He could face up to 15 years in prison. I doubt he sees the inside of a cell. But still, like he allegedly committed assault here, and like people are not only excusing it, but they're also going out of their way to praise him just because they hate Colby Covington. And it's like you have to think about it rationally as well. And I thought you said it best, Brian, with the way you described that.
Some of the fighters I saw say that Colby needs to lose the character because he's hiding behind the character and he's going too far. And he's like, he's talking about Carl Usman's dad being in prison and stuff. It's like, dude, that's like that's on a different level. That's different country stuff. I mean, that's you can act like an all-American all you want, but like that stuff you don't even know what you're talking about at this point, So I'm sure if he lived the life, some of these guys like Ngannou had to travel to get to where he's at, he wouldn't speak like this, and I mean, even like Khabib, it's like you talk about a man's religion, he goes over the edge. It's just that there's got to be, we're going to really get out of hand one day. It's going to be like the who was it, Gus Johnson? We're on live TV, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
and the Nick D. It's going to be.
Now that I was
10
okay
times
with
worse.
that. I was the Diaz brothers deserve their justice. I was okay with that.
Well, I think they're the worst role models though at this point because. It's like Nate, and then Nate Diaz can't even put together like I don't even know what he's talking about anymore.
I muted Brian, guys. Don't even worry about it. No, you're back.
Alex has such superstar fandom for the Diaz brothers, Brian.
I love him.
But you saw his text. You lost in the ring. Now you lost in. I guess, are you saying like Jorge Masvidal lost in life because now you lost in the ring, now you lost in life because you messed up? Or like, is he saying Colby lost because he got hit in the fourth round and according to Nate Diaz, that's how you win a fight. If you drop them one time in the fight, you win,
Nobody ever
just
knows
point to him. I mean, I don't know. It's just, they have no repercussions either. It's just, it would just be nice to see Nate Diaz find 30% of his purse for making a foul. I don't know. I just
Brian Jackson, I've never seen a pivot like this in an interview where I go from loving you to now you're public enemy number one. Like the rule number one on the show is you do not disparage the Diaz brothers. I am 209 till I've never been to Stockton, but I'm sure it's a lovely place. I am 209 till I die.
Brian, James and I are going to have you on the whole show next week now.
Oh God.
Yeah, I mean, I just wish. I mean, I just wish he could type correctly. I don't know. The way he types bothers me now, I don't know. Have you ever seen Tony Ferguson, how he types? Oh, my goodness. He talks in emojis. He
does.
It's weird. It's the only thing that bothers me more than Nate Diaz's Twitter.
No, I told this story a few weeks ago on the show, Brian, that once, like a decade ago, I had an in-person, this is while he was still with Strikeforce, because Nick Diaz, my favorite fighter of all time. And I think he beat Robbie Lawler. I think that it was, I think he let him win. I don't know what happened there, but like 10 years ago, I had an in-person, in-studio interview scheduled with Nick Diaz. I loved him, and he didn't show up. But I was actually happy he didn't show up. I would have been
Neither did Brock Lesnar.
I had, that's actually true. I had an interview once scheduled with Brock Lesnar, and I was angry that Brock Lesnar, it was supposed to be over the phone, and like he never called. I was angry about that, but I was not like for Nick Diaz. I appreciate his brand so much that he doesn't show up for things, press conferences, interviews. I would have been disappointed if he did show up. Like when I scheduled the interview, I'm like, God, it's going to be so lame if he shows up to a press obligation. He didn't show up, and I was like, that's my guy.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we start promoting him to come back on the show? He owes you one.
We should.
Let's every show you need to have fans in the comment, like tag him or something in this, and then that way he comes on the show.
And then, Ryan, what we got to do if we're going to have Nick on the show. Then if we have Nick on the show, James and I will ask him the questions, and then Alex, Nick will answer, and then Alex will tell the audience what he actually said.
Oh, that would be comedic.
Yeah, we'd have
that would get this show picked up by Barstool like that. We'd have weed sponsors.
Yeah,
It'd be great. You'd have the Diaz. It'd be the 209 Alex podcast. Just
yeah, I'd be smoking weed live on the show if just to make Nick more comfortable if he actually showed up.
The Key and Peele show, the Obama translator. You could be the Diaz translator. He's really upset with you right now. He wishes you would just take a fight, and if you don't, he's going to smack you in public. So
I love it. Well, listen, despite your Diaz slander, I still think you're a good guy, Brian.
I still love the Diaz brothers. I just okay. It's all this stuff. Like I said, I just hope the one change. If I could see one thing, I wish this kind of stuff. The social media focus, all that stuff would just kind of die down a little bit and we get back to normal a little bit. I know people's been stuck indoors for a long time and everything's starting to try to get back to normal. But the one change I kind of wish would be just let them be the independent contractors. It would be cool to see I would rather see Conor McGregor versus Jake Paul than Conor McGregor versus Usman. I would love to see Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul. I would love to see, Floyd Mayweather in a mixed rules match with Henry Cejudo or something, 1 round of wrestling followed by 1 round of boxing or something, this is the future I want to see and the direction it can go, and Ngannou get to go fight. If Usman wants to fight Canelo, let him, let him go get that payday. It's his brain. It's his health. These are the things that are going to get people excited. And I only think it would build the brand of the UFC to capitalize off this stuff. Let a guy go to a bare knuckle and knock out a bare knuckle champ, or whatever, I mean, if a fighter wants to do something, it's a free country and and then if they want to treat them like employees, then they should get paid like a salary per year. That way they're getting a weekly paycheck and they can live like a regular person. And then every time they cash in, they get a big money fight, and then they can pay them whatever they want. It's like they get to live a normal life. They're under contract for 3 years. And, they
hopefully we get to that by the time Dana White's offering me a deal.
There you go.
Yeah, we should get, whatever you guys do, Frank's fight, we should get Dana to come down for Dana White looking for a fight. Like we should get him to fly down here and scout Frank.
Well, Dean should be able to hook that up.
He should. He probably could, man. I love it. Brian Jackson, thank you so much for the work you're doing with Frank.
That would be a great thing then. We should get some local fight that needs that needs that, and then that way this would be a side piece, and then we could do like a parody Dana White looking for a fight, and then we can have some fun with it, that way. Who knows?
We'll do a bait and switch where Dana thinks he's coming down to watch like a 22-year-old prospect, and then that fight was canceled, but we have Frank here to fight.
Yeah, that would be great.
Baseball players, nobody really checked my birth certificate, so
Right. Yeah, you'd be like a Little League World Series player. Dana, he's 25. I promise you. I promise. Don't even worry about it. Oh, thanks so much, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
All righty, guys.
I love it. Who does this guy think he is with the Diaz brothers slander? Like,
I did like his point about Covington and something that I didn't think about earlier with the influences. You wonder how many 17, 18, 19-year-old, athletes, wrestlers, future MMA people that are coming up that are looking at Colby and saying, oh, that's the way I gotta go. If I want to be a star in mixed martial arts, I have to be the over the top trash talker that previous generations.
Yeah, you can see it. Chael, Connor, Colby. I mean, you see the progression of craziness. Yeah.
Yep. So hopefully it'll get better by generations and stuff like that. But we'll see.
Now I want to hit one more headline before we wrap it up. Now, you want to talk about battery charges. Masvidal, this is child's play. 1 battery charge, 2 total charges. Chael Sonnen racks up 11 counts of battery going back to that incident where, he supposedly these people in the hotel were taunting his wife, who seems like a really lovely person. So here's Lace. And I saw a couple weeks ago, I saw Chael. I didn't even realize that there were still charges pending at that point. I thought he'd already gotten through this legal trouble, but I saw Chael down at the Eagle FC event. I should have said, "Hey, Chael, man, I'm in your corner with this, bro. I hope I'm on your jury. I'm a professional legal expert now. I was on a jury a few weeks ago." So here's a little bit of the story from ESPN.com. Retired UFC fighter Chael Sonnen is being charged with 11 counts of battery, including a felony stemming from a December 18th incident in Las Vegas, according to court records. The felony is being classified as battery by strangulation. Sonnen initially received 5 battery citations in the case, but those were dismissed in January without prejudice, which means the charges can be refiled. A new criminal complaint was filed by the Clark County, that's Vegas, district attorney with the Las Vegas Justice Court on March 16th, according to court records. Sonnen currently works as an MMA analyst for ESPN. Quote, Chael will not appear on ESPN as we explore the details of these serious charges, the company said. The criminal complaint filed against Sonnen and obtained by ESPN says 6 people were attacked, including a man he is accused of strangling. The complaint states that Sonnen allegedly used force of violence upon a woman by punching, striking, and pushing her. Sonnen, according to the complaint, allegedly punched the first man, punching and kicking a second man, punching a third man in the face, punching and kneeing a fourth man, and striking a fifth man with his elbow. Now, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite in the same episode and criticize Masvidal and glorify Chael Sonnen. So, I mean, obviously, there could be repercussions for this. And Frank, we were talking about this before the episode started. This is like something out of a movie. It's like attacking James Bond, and he beats up like 6 people. That's apparently what Chael Sonnen did here.
I think where you can make a line of difference here is premeditation. Chael's just hanging out, and they talk trash to his wife, and obviously they were being really offensive, and he goes after them. Kind of a different thing than in your place, calling your people, find out where he is, and we're going to all hop in the car and go attack this guy. So I think a little different thing. So I do think that we can enjoy a little bit a man defending the woman in his life, because these kinds of assholes that conduct themselves that way, I want them all to suffer the elbows and knees and punches of someone like Chael Sonnen. I mean, I can't hear about it enough, and I can't like it more. And I realize that I might be talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I think it's the premeditation that makes the difference.
Yeah, and I'm going to look at this from a very, very, very macro level, and partially because I used to be an ESPN employee. Man, everyone has to be careful right now with the UFC, current fighters, former fighters. I mean, if you just look at the headlines over the past few months, you got John Jones, Cain Velasquez. I know Cain's not on the roster, but John Jones, Cain Velasquez, Chael Sonnen, Jorge Masvidal. And particularly with Chael, because he is a ESPN employee, and now he's being held out now to where ESPN is taking him off the air. And everyone here knows the parent company of ESPN is Disney.
Disney.
And Disney / ESPN decided to do business with the UFC a few years ago, major business with the UFC, and they handle their pay-per-views, and they do a ton of business together right now, and it's very successful. I think everyone will agree that they're doing a better job than what Fox did when they had the UFC. But at the end of the day, and I know this as a former ESPN employee of 10 years, Disney is the boss. The mouse is the boss. And if it gets to the point where there's so many negative headlines of assaults and murder attempts and beating up 6 people and who am I missing out? Whatever other John Jones, domestic violence allegedly. If this becomes a headline every month or so, at some point, someone at Disney headquarters is going to say, "Wait a minute, this doesn't fit our image. Why are we in business, even though it's not Disney directly? It's ESPN, which is a big subsidiary of Disney." And so I'm just saying, collectively, from a very, very macro level, the UFC MMA community / MMA community needs to be very careful with all this off the field, things as this sport is trying to grow, because ESPN / Disney made that commitment, but the MMA community and its athletes and the UFC also has to do its part and sort of maintain their image if they want to be taken serious as a legitimate sport in doing business with Disney.
James, you're 100% right. And in that point, I marveled previous to this incident that Chael Sonnen was even an employee. Mortgage fraud incident, drug use of the highest order while in the UFC, and now this, where I think there's some justification for action. But my point is, I couldn't believe after the first 2 things that, because you're right, Disney's the boss. So I was surprised that he was. I mean, he's so good at it. Yeah. But still, would they have Lance Armstrong doing commentary for cycling? You know what I mean? So I don't know.
That's a great point and great perspective, especially James, having worked for ESPN, and I think that's the type of insight you can't get a whole lot of places. So yeah, we'll wrap up the episode on that note. I want to remind everybody, please support our awesome sponsor, the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. I would imagine anybody watching this, you're probably a fight fan. Otherwise, I don't know why you're watching this. And keep in mind, if you want to watch every UFC pay-per-view without a cover charge, they have it at the Quarterdeck. The Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. Pay nothing at the door to watch a UFC pay-per-view fight. It's a lot better than the $75 they charge you to order it from home. I'll tell you that. And while you're there, you enjoy the fresh seafood. It's so delicious. It's so fresh. Buffalo shrimp is my favorite appetizer on the planet. The sandwiches and burgers are incredible. The baby back ribs are so tender. I've been dieting for the past several months. Even the salads are great at the Quarterdeck. And build your own poke bowl. That's a really, really healthy treat, and it's delicious. If you like sushi, you'll like that. And the sushi is awesome at the Quarterdeck. So if you want to watch all the big games and big fights there, college basketball tournament, they've got it all, including Miami tomorrow night at the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. Locations all over Broward County. If you want to find the one nearest to you, check out their website. You can also check out the full menu while you're there. QuarterdeckRestaurants.com. That's QuarterdeckRestaurants.com. The Quarterdeck, come for the food, stay for the fun. Mr. Walker, any parting shots before we run?
No, not necessarily. Looking forward to Khamzat Chimaev against Gilbert Burns. That's the fight I'm hoping doesn't, get canceled, no injuries, but I was hoping with Dariush and Islam doesn't get canceled, and it did. So I don't want to hope too much. Maybe I'm, throwing a little bad vibes on it, but I'm really, that's the second quarter fight that I just hope no one touches. I hope it happens. We have about 3 more weeks.
Frank, what about you?
More fights in the cage, less fights in the street. That's what I'm hoping for.
That's well said. That's well said. And by the way, I'll say one thing on Chimaev. Just keep your feet on the ground, Khamzat, because he's already talking about how he thinks that Israel Adesanya would actually be an easier victory for him than Kamaru Usman. So, why are you talking about different weight classes? You're not even a welterweight contender yet. Let's focus on welterweight before you talk about beating the middleweight champion. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep your head out of the clouds, because I think Chimaev has all the makings of a future champion. Thanks, everyone who tuned in, those who used the live chat, even those who didn't. And yeah, make sure, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, smash the like button. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit the like button and subscribe to 5 Reasons Sports on YouTube. And catch us again next week, every Thursday evening, 6 p.m. Another episode of 5 Rounds here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. See ya.